Attorney General Letitia James plans to run for governor, according to reporting by the Associated Press. Now, Letitia James is the first black person and first woman to serve in the role of the state's top prosecutor, and she came into office promising criminal justice reform. She burst onto the national scene for prosecuting Trump's finance guru and then for investigating the sexual assault allegations against former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Add in her legal challenges to the NRA, and James has cornered the market on delivering for progressives. Her announcement puts the Attorney General up against the incumbent governor, Kathy Hochul, who brings the bureaucratic ninja skills from decades of working in government. The New York Times is reporting James could announce her candidacy as early as tomorrow. If elected, James would be the nation's first black female governor. Back with me to discuss is Brittney Cooper. Brittney, thank you for sticking around. Early polling gives Hochul like a 19% hypothetical lead over Letitia James. How do you think that the Attorney General stacks up as a candidate against this, current slate of hopefuls, which includes also, the current governor, the mayor of New York City, and public advocate also?
I think that people haven't been paying attention to Tish James. This is a great move for her, just in terms of thinking about the trajectory of her career. Think about the folks that she's taken down. She took down Cuomo. She took down Cuomo. That is huge because he comes from a political dynasty of a family, right? So certainly that's going to get her some enemies. But let's also remember that she has had a long-term civil inquiry into the Trump organization. Then they filed criminal fraud charges against Trump, right? So here is a person who really understands where power lies and has shown that she is fearless against going after establishment folks and challenging them, and that she has the legal savvy to be able to do so. So I think that people are paying significant attention. I think that she's going to only gain. And the other thing is, I think that this race will inspire Black and brown voters to come out because Tish James has a great reputation in communities of color. And the thing that the Democratic Party has learned very particularly in the last couple of elections is that you actually want to bring your voters of color out. And so this Black woman with here's the other thing. Tish James has given us more catharsis around Donald Trump than the US Congress did when they impeached him 2 times, because she's got the inquiry going that might actually lead to some consequences for this man, right? Which is why he has also come so hard for her. And we watched her dethrone a person that we had loved previously in the earlier parts of the pandemic because he was so lovable and likable when he was on his charm offensive around how New York was managing the pandemic. So she's brutal, she's forceful, she doesn't come to play games, and I think that level of seriousness matters. But also in comportment, she is very humble. She is not a showboat, right? Because Black women don't always get the space to be able to have that kind of that grandeur that white men have. It's read really differently on a Black woman's body. So she plays the game really well. She sort of works in the back channels. She delivers. The people really like her. She's popular. She's seen as a woman of the people. And then she's just knocking white boys down like dominoes. And I think that means that we should be paying attention. Yeah.
Well, if people hadn't been paying attention before that, they certainly should now, as you mentioned. And you're right, it's about the power and her understanding of how to work power and the dynamics of the system and how to break the system from the inside. She did a lecture at Columbia earlier this year, and she spoke about a moment that really resonated with her when she was in law school. And it was hearing about the killing of an elderly disabled Black woman. That was back in 1984. And here's the quote that she said in the speech about that moment, that death could have been avoided and should have been avoided, but it required somebody with the expertise and training to deal with individuals who are in the throes of mental illness. And she talked about this twofold problem with our system, that officers can use deadly force indiscriminately, without consequence, and there's no way to hold police accountable for killings, and that we treat mental illness and poverty as crimes. Now, this is radical coming from an attorney general, a sitting attorney general for like the state of New York. As a reminder, a former attorney general did become governor. That was one Andrew Cuomo, without nearly this type of resonance with the current moment of what's going on politically. So, what do
Yeah.
we expect from her if she becomes governor when it comes to criminal justice?
Look, this is huge. I mean, the killing of Eleanor Bumpurs in 1984, an elderly Black woman who was in the throes of a mental health crisis, continues to resonate across generations as one of the most egregious acts of police violence. So it matters to me, as a person thinking about this election, that that is a touch point for her. Also, let's remember that Tish James is actually well respected by a lot of folks who come through the movement for Black lives, precisely because she is basically talking about some of the key arguments of the abolitionist movement, right? That we shouldn't be using police to do social services around folks who are in mental health crisis, and that we should be holding police officers accountable precisely because they have more access to power and resources. It's been very hard to run as a reformer in New York around issues of police accountability because police unions there are so powerful. And so she is going to have to think about what that means. But she said, here is my stance. And I think that what that is going to do for her is inspire a lot of young people who particularly trend toward the left side of the police reform debate, who are thinking about abolition, who are thinking about defund. She's not going to
Hmm.
say that kind of language because that's inappropriate. She might not be that far to the left, but there is a great level of possibility for coalition building. And so I think we can expect a lot. And I think we should give some credit to the movement for Black Lives because they have reset the table with prosecutors all over the country in places like Chicago and Cleveland, and also in Philadelphia. So you have local level prosecutors, district attorneys, for instance, who are more progressive and who are invested in the work of criminal justice reform. So she's coming along in that conversation in just the right moment where we are now starting to understand the levers of power that attorneys general have, and seeing them as a key lever for reforming the system. So if she is committed to that, then she's going to be able to pull a young vote and a more progressive vote that Hopel
Hmm.
is not going to be able to pull, and that, quite frankly, many of her other opponents are not going to be able to do. And I do think it's important to say, too, let's not forget that she's also going to run this race in the aftermath of us feeling like we were robbed of our first Black woman governor in Stacey Abrams, right? And so
Mm.
this will be a reckoning around that as well. She's going to run as progressive in a liberal state with some huge wins under her belt and with an ear to the progressives. And so I actually think she has a good shot, and I think her momentum is going to build and build.
I'm struck by your insight about how there is an opportunity to actually work with police when it comes to expanding social services, taking the pressure off of them, and that may be a very pragmatic way to bring the unions along. Though, because of her support for prosecutorial discretion, she already is in their sights as somebody who may be a little too radical when it comes to police issues, but certainly somebody to be inspired by, and we'll keep an eye on. Brittney, before I let you go, I do want to
Yeah.
go back to our first topic because we have some breaking news. CNN is reporting that President Biden is going to delay his trip to Europe because he wants to meet with the Democratic caucus, the entire caucus. So we'll see what comes out of that conversation. But what do you make of that?
Biden knows, to our earlier conversation, that he's got to make a deal. I live in New Jersey. The governor's race is hot here. Virginia is also hot. He's got to have these wins that signal that something is going to change. And so I think he's making a calculation that it would look in poor taste. Certainly, he is the foreign policy guy, but he's got to become the domestic deal maker in this moment. Um, what I'm hopeful is that this means that he feels like he can actually get a deal done if he can continue to negotiate. But what I'm also hopeful for is that this doesn't mean that progressives are throwing in the towel, and that they
Mm.
also recognize this as a moment of leverage, that Biden's urgency around needing to get this deal done means that they actually should not back down now, and that they should really hold the line for all of these sort of progressive ideals. Because if they do, we can remake our social fabric for a generation to come. And then the Democrats are going to be set up really nicely for some subsequent elections. If we give in now, we will be seen as the party that does not know how to fight. And quite frankly, Democrats are already known as people who don't know how to fight. And that's killing us at the polls, and it's killing us with the base. And so, I hope that Biden does what he does and that he makes a deal. But I also hope he remembers, as he said, African Americans, you had my back, I will have your back. He owes us this, and we need to see real gains for ourselves in whatever deals get made.
Well, and hopefully that is a deal that we can be proud of, not just here in the United States or as progressives, but on the world stage. Because when the President of the United States has to delay a meeting with the Pope, the world definitely notices. Brittney Cooper, thank you so much for sticking with us tonight.